Alright, I wanted to do a video on the M2, well, on combines in general here. When I was growing up, we had white combines. Dad had a 7300, I think he bought fairly new, and he traded that on an 8600. He had a 4-row head on a 7300, and I'm sure Jake knows that a 7300 didn't run a 4-row head very well, but he had one on there. They had problems with the final drives breaking too. But yeah, he traded the 7300 in. Had an 8600. Bought an 8600 then. That was all before I was in grade school. I got to ride in the combines. In fact, one of my memories of the 8600 was I was sitting there about half asleep next to the seat, and the oil filter blew off the Perkins. Covered the cab side of the cab window with black engine oil, and I just about flipped out. Of course, Dad shut the machine off quick, and we changed oil, but it blew the filter right off the side of the engine. But Dad, when he quit farming, he went to work for the coal company, sold the 8600 to the neighbor. He bought a 55 John Deere. We still farmed here, the home farm. Yeah, I remember running the 55 when I was in high school. It was it had a 3-row wide head on it, and I don't know, I think it was a 12-foot grain platform, and we run some oats with it and shelled our own corn, and that was about all. And somewhere, I don't know, it was pretty well wore out, and my brother took it to the demolition derby. I think I still have parts around here for it, but it's pretty much, you know, just was scrap. Then well, Dad had the neighbors with the 8600 run all our corn, and back then we didn't have many beans. We just, you know, with some oats and corn. Dad passed away in 2001. I paid the neighbors to combine my corn and beans, and that was a pretty tough check to write, about $1,200 every year. I said, well, that's enough of that. And I went out and bought an E3 Gleaner. It was a 2-row head, had a 2-row corn head, 2-row wide, and it had a 10-foot rigid grain head for it. It had a 225 gas engine. It was the same engine that was in a D14 Alice Chalmers tractor, or I think originally it was a WD-45 engine, but it served me well. I run it about 4 years, and that 2-row head was just really, really slow. Then I found a neighbor here. We're only about 3 miles from Pennsylvania, but a mile over into Pennsylvania, a guy had an F Gleaner. So I sold the E3, and went over and looked at this F, and I bought it. It had a floating cutter bar. I think it had a 15-foot head on it. It was a good sized head for what it was, and it had a bean head and a 4-row wide corn head. And the problem with it was the clutch was out of it. And I don't know and a Gleaner and a gear drive. The clutch is inside that housing. It's just a regular disc clutch. Got fingers and a throwout bearing and everything. So I took the tire off and broke it down. Here what happened, the fingers got all broken off the clutch. And we drove it home. I drove it home the 4 miles with not being able to stop. It wasn't that it was slipping, it wouldn't stop. So I shut it off at the intersections and fired back up. And the traffic cleared up. So, but it was a 2800 Allis-Chalmers engine, which was a naturally aspirated 301 cubic inch Allis-Chalmers diesel. And let me tell you what, that little F would shell some corn. It had plenty of power. That 6-cylinder just sung like run like a song. But the F was basically a 4-row machine. It wasn't a high capacity, but it would do pretty good with that 4-row head. And at the time, I had a 5400 weight corn planter, which was set up for 4-row wide. It was 38-inch rows. It kept getting harder and harder. It had blowers. It had 4 rows of little air fans on them that would blow air in and hold the seat against the disc. And it was harder and harder to get parts for them fans, and harder to get parts for the monitor through Agco. So I said, you know what, I need to upgrade corn planters. And that's when I bought the 7000 Deere, the 6-row narrow. And I still had the F. And I found a guy that had a 4-row narrow head for an F. And I bought that. And for a year I planted 6 rows and picked 4. Which was alright as long as you kept the rows straight. And that worked out alright. But the F had an issue. It was a gear driven machine. Obviously it had a clutch. But it had this same variable speed shift like this. This is a cylinder that pulls this plate in and out, changes the pitch on this belt. That's how the variable speed works. It's the same on all the Gleaners I've ever had. But yeah, there was one problem with that little F, and the problem with the F was the concave was closed. Now on a Gleaner combine, the light's not too good, but that big wheel there, that's the cylinder. And unlike John Deere's or Internationals, they've got a feeder house chain that feeds the cylinder, which is back in the main body of the machine back here. The Gleaner, the cylinder is right in the throat, or right in the feeder house. And yeah, so you've got this feeder beater here. This shaft's the feeder beater, and that is the cylinder. Well, on the F, the concave was right around the bottom of that, and it was closed. So it had to spit all the corn. It would shell corn. It had to spit it through the cylinder, and shell it out the back. And he had wet corn or something. Boy, it just grind it up. I decided then I needed something a little newer and a little better, so I found this M. This M has what they call a rattle, and it's a conveyor chain that goes up underneath the cylinder. You can't hardly see it here now, but the conveyor transfers the corn back up here to the separator, and the concaves on this machine are open. They've got a screen like the whites in the John Deere. Yeah, they've got a conveyor, and it comes clear up here. I think they come up here to this shaft, and that's where the separator starts. The fan's down here. This is the fan pulley. Where is it at? That's the fan pulley. And the separators from there back. Everything on this machine is run by those hydraulic valves right there. There's 6, and there's 2 more down here. And the hydraulic pump runs off the end of the crankshaft. This machine has a 2900 Alice Chalmers engine, which is the same 301, but it's turbocharged. And hang on, I'll bring you back. Okay, yeah. That's a 301 Alice Chalmers, turbocharged. Got an oil cooler on it. Twin alternators, because everything's run with electric. It's got a separator clutch and a header clutch, and they're both 12-volt electric. So there's no muffler. Exhaust right out of the turbo, straight over there to the ring cap. So intake, it's got a Donaldson filter, rotary screen on it, and big radiator. I never had trouble with it overheating. I never had trouble with it plugging up the radiator or the the screen or anything. The only downfall to this is there's a panel inside the grain tank you got to take down to change oil filters, because the oil filters are down there, and that's the ether starter, and of course it's disconnected because I don't believe in ether. Yeah, dual GM alternators. It's got 2 batteries. I've never had trouble with it starting, even in cold. Yeah, this machine come from out in western Ohio 4 or 5 years ago. I was thinking it was a couple years, but it's been 4 or 5 years ago. Christmas Eve, I drove out and 1105 Massey, you'll know where it is. It's Shear Farm Equipment out in yeah, there's one out in Worcester, but there's one out in Mansfield too. And I drove out there on Christmas Eve and looked at it. Never heard it run. Never heard it. Never started it. Never nothing. I talked to the parts or the salesman, and luckily, while I was waiting on the salesman, the man that owned it walked in. He traded it in on a 9500 Deere, and he says, "Oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with it." He says he just wanted a newer machine. So, but it is gear drive, no hydrostatic. Everything run with rocker switches. I think I showed in the other video. This deal here is the electric clutch for the separator. The electric comes in here, goes back through the shaft, and the clutch is back here behind the variable speed shiv. Yeah, when I bought it at Shears, it had this corn head with it. There was no beam platform, no nothing. This is the head I bought off of Logan back, and it's taken a little work, but it's a real nice head. I like it. It's a regular beam platform. It's got crap on it now, but it's got a floating cutter bar, and the wobbler blocks floats. The other head I had for it, it was a regular Alice Chalmers rigid head, and somebody, I think it was Hart Carter, put a kit on it and extended the lip so that the front cutter bar would float. It had a real problem. It'd pick up rocks. This one, the only thing I've picked up a few golf ball size rocks and clods of dirt, but other than that, this head is a wonderful, wonderful head. Logan makes comments about the blue bats. When he had it, it had blue plastic pieces bolted to the wooden bats because the fingers were all ate off. Now I've replaced them twice now because the header height control screwed up on me last year and ate a bunch of them off, but they're only plastic, so I think they're $1.50 a piece at Shoop's, so you buy them by the hundreds. So yeah. This tank, I think it'll hold 100 and what is it? I can dump 3 times in the Louisville, have 300 bushel. It'll hold right out 100 bushel, just depending on how far you heap it up. And it don't run over the cab. It runs over this edge right here. So, and it's getting a little dark in here to be. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it. It's got a telltale system and stuff on it, but none of that's ever worked. Tells you how much grain's going over the back and which shafts are turning and stuff like that, but it's never. Some of that stuff works and some of it doesn't. The hour meter doesn't seem to show any difference, so I don't think it's been working. It does have a radio, and the radio does work. The air conditioner, I think said once before, the air conditioner, it had air conditioning, but it was out of Freon and it was R12 and I wasn't going to charge it. So, yeah, the reason I don't have a John Deere combine is on a John Deere, at least 7700 or 7720 or an 8820, the engine sits right over there. And all the belts go down between the cab, down along the separator. Likewise, there's a door here and a catwalk out there across it. But you got to stand out there and work on the engine. And that was always been my problem. If you had to change the belts on the back of the engine, they were down in here between the cab and the motor. And then the grain tank was behind the motor. So, yeah, either way, you had to get. Yeah, it wasn't good. I just never liked it. Gleaner's always been everybody jokes about them being silver receders and things like that, but man, they're simple. They're as simple as you can get. Everything's out here in the wide open. I got a hydraulic auger. It extends out. It stays in that position. You run the cylinder out and it folds out. But all the belts, all the chains, there's the back of the motor. It's all out in the open. There's nothing. The hardest part is getting in here between the tire and the head to change the cylinder. I don't know if you can see it, but up in there, there's a gauge to change the concave. The clearance of the cylinder concave is right there. This hydraulic tank is for the reel speed. It's got a variable reel speed, and that's the pump right here. I really can't standing in the light, but there's a pump there and its own hydraulic system that runs the reel speed, and that all works well. The walkers are open on the bottom. It has, I don't know if you can see it, but it's got this solid sheet that runs the grain back down into the separator. It's got a straw chopper, only I don't have sections in it to chop. It's just the flail, so it just spits it out. Got a belt that runs a straw chopper, and I don't know what the length of that thing is, but it's about $200 worth of belt. Like I say, the hydraulic tank, all the hydraulic valves and the hydraulic pump are right there out in the open. It has a cooler, hydraulic cooler, goes up in there behind the radiator. The big pulley runs the unload auger. It's got a manual clutch on it. Tightens this belt. These rods here shift the transmission. It's got 3 forward, 1 reverse, and then it's got high and low range, so it's got 6 gears. And there's your tailings return, clean grain elevator up there. Like I said, this was Logan's head. When his combine blew up, he was going to take it to the auction, and I commented on his video and I said, you have a bean head? And he says, yeah, I've got a bean head. I said, well, what do you want for it? We made arrangements, and he hauled the thing down here, so I paid him what he wanted, and I give him money for hauling it down here, and I'm real happy with it. So yeah, anyhow, that's my Gleaner M2, a 6-row corn head up here. I think I had problem with the one gearbox on this end was broke, and I put a new trough in this auger on this side, and I patched one on the other side because they were rusted out. But other than that, the corn head has been excellent. So hold on a minute, I'll bring you back. Yeah, this is the other bean head, and like I said, it was a rigid head, and I think it's a Hart Carter or somebody added that panel from here to there, moved the cutter bar out, and yeah. But this head, it's just not right. It picks up rocks terrible, because that's what happened here. Busted one of them fingers off. It went around the inside and bent that up, and that's why I quit using it. Did a nice job. It was but it just picked up, and this is my homemade header cart. But yeah, that's where it come from. Rochelle, Illinois. Huh. But anyhow, it was a good header, but it would pick up rocks terrible. And it's a 16-footer. I think the one on the machine's a 15-footer now. But this one had a hydraulic connection here, and this was the variable speed pulleys for the reel. It was a little different. Got a wobbler box drive for the cutter bar. And alright, well, that's my combine story, and I think that'll be long enough. So, alright, thanks for watching, and thanks for commenting. Appreciate everybody. Thank you.